Hey everybody, welcome to USA Wrestling's Moments Off the Mat. We're on Challenge Block Call 5 with US Wrestling Officials Association, members of our National Coaches Council, and some special guests. So we'll jump into the call today. Zach, go ahead and take it away.
Hey, so great. Glad to see everybody back again. So today we're going to be looking kind of like risk or no risk, which I have a slide up that kind of explains a little bit of that, which I'll have on the public version of this. But risk and no risk is really kind of, I guess, a UWW term. Like when you travel there, they talk a lot about risk or no risk. When we in the States typically say, is that a slip throw or not, is kind of what that looks like. So that's what it's going to be like today. So I actually have 8 questions, 8 videos today. So one more than normal, and probably less choices. So it's kind of one or the other, and then there's a couple of other things sprinkled in. So it's a little bit of intermixing some other things we talked about as well. I think the one thing we'll see is as you start doing these, like you're taking all the different areas or topics we've been doing and merging them all together into certain content, as we look at each one, like they're not completely separate at times. So here's the first slide that comes up, kind of just explaining some things with it. So I'll give you a chance to look that over. And this will be on the public one as well, kind of the beginning intro slide with it.
I feel like I'm definitely going to go down on this one because I am a huge fan of why can't they see it as a bail as opposed to a slip, and it drives me bananas. So I'm in deep doo-doo in this one, I believe.
Well, I think
we're all in the same boat on this one.
I don't know with Zach there. I don't know, Zach. It was your wrestling career that you bailed out all the time, so that's why it's stuck with you.
Hey, those who can't coach, right? That's where I'm at.
What about just having to read something? That's the hard part.
All right. So I think is looking at this, I'll be honest with you, probably of all the situations that we have, like especially when we've looked back at Fargo particularly, if there is one place where the challenges get overturned, it's often in this area. Like, so it gets called one and then it gets called the other. And this has a lot to do with, there's certain things to look for, but sometimes it's just, how you look at it and how you evaluate it kind of depends. So this is probably the one area that can kind of go back and forth a little bit. So.
Yeah, because it's a lot on your opinion.
Very much so. Very much so. So again, as today is, I guess it's my opinion, whether you get right or wrong here.
Oh,
so
God, now we're in trouble.
Good luck, JD.
Jesus.
All right.
Since it's your opinion, real quick, since it's your opinion, what is your interpretation? Like, interpret exactly what's written here.
So I think one of the things that, like, what I typically look for as a referee, like, is one, if it's risk or considered a slip, was it a legitimate attempt? Like, did they actually try something? And sometimes you're looking for, sometimes it's not very good, and sometimes the action's better than others. I think it has a lot to do too with whether they were under attack in the process. Like if you felt like somebody else started the action and then they just tried something, then that action that they tried has to be really good for me to consider a slip. Mm-hmm. If it's not really good and it happens so quickly, and depending on where you're standing, you may or may not see all the things that were done. So when you stand from one side, it looks like one part. If you stand on the other side, it may look different. But I think if the attacking wrestler starts and then the defending wrestler makes an attempt, then you're going to score the attacking wrestler, unless it's, again, surprisingly a really good attempt that really took it away from him. So, but outside of that, it's very much an opinion-based process here. But I think that's the part we try to look for is, one term you'll hear a lot internationally is, was it a simulation? And simulation just means they simulated or made it look like there was an action when the reality was it was the other person's action that caused it. And the other part too, looking for was, sometimes do they catch him? Like they try an action, but they catch him. We talk about if it's a catch, that means they have to get a lock around them before their knees hit the mat. Mm-hmm. If their knees hit the mat, then it's going to be, they're already considered down at that point. So that's a little bit too. I think it also kind of depends a little bit too on when the action occurs, if they get back to defendable position or not, which we looked at last week. When they were at an angle, like they made an action and they kind of came out front. It wasn't a correct throw, but they already had the angle to get behind them. So it was very difficult for them not to get scored on. So in that situation, I would consider that risk and go back to standing versus letting them go behind for 2. So, so I think I start with a couple of relatively easier ones here as we get started, and then it progressively gets a little bit maybe more challenging in the process, and then other things come into place in this. So
Let's roll.
First one.
God. Okay.
50-50. Very good. Very good. All right. For those that said 2 points, why 2 points?
To me, it looked like blue stops the motion there before red got back down to the mat. So I thought blue intervened.
Intervene. There's a word for wrestling.
Yeah. For those that scored, that said it was risk, no points. Why did you have that?
That's easy because red put himself there with just horrible technique, but absolutely blue just kind of was leaning on him. It was, he didn't backstep, it was just bad technique, but he did put himself there. I didn't see blue put him there. Here comes bad technique, dropped to my right knee, then fell on my stomach. It was horrible, but I scored nothing, and I'll bring you back
Word
up.
horrible.
Yeah. I think, the one part we look at is so many times in these situations, like the technique's not always great, because if it was a great technique, it may have scored, so sometimes they make a mistake. They don't do something right. But in this case, I agree. I thought it was no points and risk, largely because I didn't see blue do anything to deserve points. Like he didn't do an action. He didn't start an action. He wasn't making a counter, and red was already on the ground before, and he just came on top of him. So in that case, that's why I went with no risk.
So what if somebody was just like, because that was deceiving because it was so bad, but he obviously did start it. So I think you look at it a second and go, oh man, should we kind of reward him? Because he's being rewarded by being brought up. If somebody's that bad and they're doing that as like an acting job and over throwing these, what do you do as an official?
So I think
in this situation, if that would have been the second or third attempt by red, I would have definitely scored blue.
Right. Different story.
I think that this was not great, but I've seen way worse when they don't even connect with anything. At least he got his arm. You can see he got his arm underneath there at least a little bit and has a hold of him a little bit. There's some really bad technique that in the first time, and I think you just warn, as a referee, we typically warn them like, hey, if it's really bad and he thought it was kind of a bailout, but the guy wasn't really doing anything, you just look and say, it's got to be better, or you're going to give up points. And you kind of give them a warning before you start there. But yeah, certainly there's some bad technique that eventually you're just like.
And I think, Zach, too, the first go-round, we're wanting to always reward the offensive wrestler. If it's kind of anything in the middle, you always want to just lean a little bit. I know when I officiate tournaments of younger kids, I'll give them 2 before I'll say stop doing that, because I want to reward them taking risk. And I think, that was, with me, I went ahead and said, if he did it again, absolute 2 blue. But, because it's so bad. But don't we want to give him a little bit, reward that offensive guy?
Absolutely. I think that's the part when we look at, like, that was the switch that happened. There was a stretch there when we mentioned this last week where everything was always 2 points. Like you made an attempt like this and they were scoring 2 points. And then it got to where nobody was taking the attempt anymore. It's kind of like why you don't see a lot of throws in folk style, because if you don't connect on it, you're giving up 2 points on the takedown. And so I think that when you stop rewarding, or at least, protecting the attacking wrestler here, I think you put yourself in position to really start limiting the number of actions that are scored or people are willing to take. So I definitely agree with that. Attaboy, Danny, you're in the top 4.
Yeah.
Oh, man, Danny.
All right.
Tom, don't worry. He'll be right below you in a second here.
Next.
I am sure I'm going to get this one wrong, but
Same.
What?
No,
I got it right. Oh,
Pretty
thank God.
I'm not that one blue guy, just for the record.
I am. I put no points there.
Oh, see,
Loser.
that's a bail to me. He bailed there. That's why I'm like, no way. That's got to be red.
So
or
Zach,
whoever
walk
scored
us
here.
through what you see here.
Okay,
Me?
so I see red on the attack, red on the lock, right? Red's pressuring in. Blue's trying to make a move. I get that, but he was under duress the whole time, and he was always on the falling down here. He was never actually throwing. He didn't even move the guy from A to B. So even if it was a bad correct throw, he didn't stop this guy's motion that he was in. Right? To me, that's too red all day long. But if we're at Fargo, sorry, I'm not picking on everybody. It's a slip, and it just, oh Lord,
Yeah.
it drives me nuts.
I think that's a good point. The one thing is like, and this is where I think even in Fargo, you see the most challenges overturned in Fargo off of whether it's a slip or not. Like it was called a slip and then it gets challenged and it gets changed, or vice versa the other way. But I agree with you, Zach. Like right here, I think this picture's a pretty good view of it too. Like he's got a pretty good lock on him right here. Like, so he only has one chance. And I agree. Like, and this is what I was mentioning earlier, like, unless he really like makes a great throw where he really like makes him lose control of this, like I have trouble, calling that a slip in this situation.
Why was the exception to the rule and went the other way? I agreed. He was under attack, but I didn't feel the guy was pulling in his hips to throw. So he just had a lock. He did have a lock. When I watched Blue throw, horrible technique again. I made a comment. We're still in Mexico, I guess. There's this recreation building. If you look, he turned his hips, and Red had to take 2 hops on his outside leg, and his head was still under there too. If you run it through, you watch Red take 2 steps with his right leg. So he did change the motion. He didn't just come in and under attack. He changed. Watch this throw and hop on Red's foot, head stuck, and then he pulled out. So he did have to defend an action, and it got him to the mat. So I went slip.
Well, there's 2 things I saw. Was Red got the lock, and right here, it shows him establish an angle, coming to the side and establishing an angle. So that move to me is red all the way, and blue is a bailout.
Hey, actually, there's another reason I like 2 red here too. And so we think, so red is making the attempt here. Right now, blue is about to get called for passivity.
Yep.
So he's under attack, about to get called for passivity because the referee's got his hand out, and now he's just waiting for the action. So now in this process, like he's under attack, he's about to get called for passivity. He doesn't make it. He doesn't make a correct throw or doesn't score. Good chance I probably score this too. So. All right. Danny, we're stopping right now, buddy. You're making the podium.
I'm going to screenshot that, but I don't want to lose my spot in the game.
All right, here we go. Next.
Oh, it's going to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's where I have to think. What would Zach think? Because that was pretty horrible.
It's a great statement.
I went 2 and 2 there. I don't care.
I went 2 and 2.
I'm the same. And
Okay.
Still on the podium.
I didn't think
I went
because
2
Zach
too.
would agree with me on that one. No.
Oh, no.
All right.
Zach probably went 2 red. Watch.
What's that?
You went the other way. Which way did you go there, Zach?
I 2.
I went 2.
Okay, just checking. Not you, Zach. The good Zach.
Oh,
Yeah. I was
oh
like, which
man.
All right. It's always. I've had a couple of these videos, which is good in a sense. Is to some extent the referee is scoring it different than the judge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the judge in this case, if you watch this, he scored it no points, but the referee scored it 2 and then allowed it to continue for 2 more. So in this case, the match chairman had to make a decision on this and had to make one pretty quickly. Yeah. that way the 2 and the 2, either way, you got to take it all away. So
Mm-hmm.
for those who scored 2-2, somebody that, walk us through why you.
Yeah, okay, I will. The reason why I went 2 and 2, and it was tough for me to do that, is I felt like Blue held him up long enough from hitting the ground. He didn't hit his knees right away. He pumped him through they covered a bit of a mat, and Blue held Red up in the air for just a little bit longer than normal, enough to keep him up, and then make Red have to try to re-attack here. So at that point, Blue's taking over the move. He's ready to go to score, and then got wrenched for 2.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he held him up. It started, it held him up, got him down, and scored the 2 and the 2.
Yeah, there's 100 arguments one way or the other, but I thought he stopped him.
Yeah. All right. Uh-oh. Danny screenshot.
Hold it there. Hold it there.
All right.
Oh,
Great
man.
choices here.
Either moving up or down, but it's not an in between.
That was tough.
Man, that was easy. That was easy. I don't know if I got the
You
right.
get it right. It was easy.
It was easy.
Yeah.
Wrong answer.
No, it was easy.
All right, so let's start with the 2 Blue. 5 of you scored 2 Blue.
Me? That was me. Because I didn't see any exposure. I saw a bunch of wrestling, and then I saw Blue on top. I went 2 Blue. Red drops to his knees to do a shoulder throw, so that's not going to work there. Okay, he doesn't get any exposure, and Blue goes behind.
I'm actually with JD on this one too. So Red has to make 2 attempts to score. So going back to a definition that we used prior, the cartwheel that we teach as coaches, right? We cartwheel over, so we're defending 1 throw. Then Red moves into another wrestling position, and they're already on the ground. So you can't have you can't slip on the ground essentially, right? If you're trying to make a throw. So I would assume that the defense that Blue with the cartwheel made the wrestling keep going. Red moved into another move. Blue shrugged off the next attack and then ends up on top for 2. That's what I was running with.
Okay, that's good. I think it's a great explanation. Those that scored no points, why'd you score no points?
I scored no points just because of the video last week where I thought it looked very similar and you scored at no points.
Well, the only way you could have a correct throw is if he hit his hip. So he didn't hit his hip. And you're right. Red went to his knees, but you have to remember that a throw is basically dependent on what the defensive wrestler does. Doesn't make any difference what the offensive wrestler does.
Mm-hmm.
And Red made that attempt. Blue did not come out front, so he couldn't score a reversal or anything like that. So I just went slip.
Yeah, that's how when I looked at it, like, and I think Zach, I think you had a great discussion point on that, and I think that could go either way in that process. I do like the fact that Red made an attempt. Blue did cartwheel out to the side, so he didn't get the 2 for the correct hold, and he was already down there, so he just tried to fight. He tried to keep with essentially the same action, but he was already down there and in that position. So, since he was already on the mat and not necessarily a great position, at least he made an attempt early, and this is early in the match too.
Mm-hmm.
Cadet level match, so it was only a 4-minute time on this. So they've only been at it for just under 30 seconds when they started this. So
I don't believe that. I think there's some. I didn't hit that button.
I do that all the time, Danny. I'll hit the wrong button because of the colors and
Maybe that's what I did. Maybe that's what I did because I was positive I put.
I've been trying to make sure I put the colors with the
You
score.
You do. I don't know. I don't know.
Indiana.
The first 2 weeks already messed us up when they weren't organized like that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, why did I put that?
I feel like I got it right, but I feel like at the same point I didn't get it right. But I think I did.
I put this video on here for a couple of reasons.
Lord.
So
Yes, I got it right.
I in my head I was thinking, slip blue, and not 1 point blue. I definitely don't agree with what I put.
yeah, I probably should have had no points on that. Actually, I don't know why I had that.
I don't know
I'll have
why
to
I
change
did
that before I send the link.
I'd have gone no. I had
no raising my hands like this. Like
there was a no score. Was no score button, right?
There was a no score
yeah,
button.
that's what I was. I thought I was hitting blue no score.
And that's correct. And that's correct. And that's why I made that mistake not putting no points on there, because that will often get called sometimes no points because they're like, oh, it was risk and but it's out of bounds and you can't have a slip out of bounds. So no points for blue, and I guess one blue. That was my mistake on that. Was not an option. Those who scored two red.
Protest we can file here?
No.
Yeah.
So two red. There's a number of you put two red. Anybody would like to?
Oh, that's tough.
I saw it as the only option. That he had the lock, but I'll go back to JD's description of horrible.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, red did do a slide by under the arm, right? The technique would be just a good step down and disappear, but at the same point, you can't go out of bounds. He didn't have control of him out of bounds, right? He didn't take him down out of bounds. The guy fell to his belly out of bounds. And once you're out, you can't score again, right? You're done. So you have to give the one.
Unless you consider that a continuation. And
yeah, that's what I did.
The only thing that stopped that after watching it like the 15th time was I saw the knee on the ground. So is that considered parterre and it can only be one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that their only option, I think it's either two red or one red, whether you think he did a duck under and ducked the arm. The hard part is that's a really hard call to make, because blue had the lock at first and then makes a throw. It's not a great throw, but it's a throw. And then red kind of drops, they land out of bounds. And as he does hit in bounds, but that kind of like that continuation just hits all, full speed. It almost hits at the same time. He lands out of bounds in this case. So, certainly two red could be an option. But I think one red was just a better solution here, particularly just for the situation. But, another part to this is if we watch the rest of this video, watch the scoreboard here. So they scored at one red.
And there's a challenge.
Who challenged this?
Blue, I bet you.
Correct.
No, red did.
No.
I think blue challenged.
Blue challenges. I'll stop it.
Oh, he did.
The scoreboard lights up with the color. So in this case, blue challenged this call, in this situation. So here's the situation, which was this is where you're looking at from somebody outside in, watch this, says this was a really bad challenge because one red was the best they could have gotten.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're going to challenge this. It's either going to be one red or it's going to be two red, but regardless, they're going to lose the challenge. And if somebody watches and says, oh, I think it's two red, not only did they lose the challenge, they lost, the points got better for the red, and they lost the challenge and got one more on top of it. So those are situations sometimes when you look at it like, oh, it's a risk, but it's out of bounds. It should be no points. In this case, like it might have been risk, but it went out of bounds. Take the 1 point and be happy and move on.
Yeah, that's like the best outcome ever. I don't know why they even thought about throwing up that challenge. That was silly.
It is, but sometimes if people don't quite understand the rules, they think it's a risk, like, oh, that's a slip, so it's no points. But they don't realize the out of bounds portion of it is why that got scored 1. And the referee was really clear too. He indicated the line by moving his hand like this, and then came up with the 1 point. And so he was. I thought the referee did an excellent job in this situation with this score. But that was the best situation. But you see this from time to time, some really bad challenges, because people see only that side of it and they forget that out of bounds part. Can't slip out of bounds.
Dang it, Jackie.
Danny, you're still on the hunt, buddy. 3 more. So.
I feel like I might as well pick right now.
Right.
I get it right, I get more points.
I have no idea if this is going to work out really good for me or really bad, but
You just tapped red. I saw you tap red. You bailed because he was on top.
No, I don't.
I didn't see any exposure here. And then red's on top.
I honest to God think it's a slip, like, because he continued wrestling. He never stopped him, but I'm sure that it's not going to go the right way. He had slipped to his back. He kept driving. He never held him on his back, in my opinion. But that I could be. Like I said, I see slip here. Like, that's probably the one way I see a slip that makes sense. Probably shouldn't be talking about it.
Damn.
Bingo.
No.
Boom. Take that, Jackie.
All right, Zach, would you like to explain?
Yeah, because okay, so in the reality of in the world of wrestling, and I think this is honest to God the way I see it, Blue makes a really good attempt here. He steps in, he fires off a throw, he keeps driving. Never did Red stop his motion of the throw. Right now, Blue does a crazy great job of running around and going to the same side that he landed on, but and also a great job of continuing to score points. Because to be honest with you, you gotta make a run like that. You should try to kill it on top. But Blue comes in, steps in, and runs a really good throw here. Good lift, gets his feet off the mat, moves him A to B. I mean, all Red did was literally post his head, stop the throw, so he could not go to his back, which is great. But then Blue turned over right to his belly. Now, if Red could have locked and held him there, that would have obviously been all Red's points at a point. It would have been 2 for the counter, then gut wrench. But he didn't ever hold him there.
This needs to be deleted after I say it, but I'm 100% with Zach on that.
Bingo. It's going into the archives.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's the first plate you're really looking at is whether this was risk or not. There's actually 2 parts. I put in one of the calls I had was 2 blue, 1 red, and that 2 blue was for a correct throw. He didn't go to danger, but was it a correct hold, which is what we had last week. And so we really kind of added a couple parts into this. So this is where a lot of the things we've been doing kind of all merge together in different situations. Because this first action, you have to make a quick decision. Number one, was it because he didn't go to danger. So was it a correct hold? And last week we said it's not a correct hold unless he goes to his hip or chest, basically. In this case, Red did a great job of not going to his hip or chest in this process. The next question you have to say is, okay, if it's not a correct hold, is it risk, or does he get a takedown, or did he hold him, in danger? And I think Zach, nailed it. Was a great description of exactly what I would say in this process. Like, this was a really good attempt. And I think when we look at it too, we talked about this last week too. He ended up already on that side. It's not like he had to go anywhere. He was already popped up and he was already there on that side and locked up and was behind him. So in this situation, I would look at calling this risk.
Yep. I called it wrong. I can see it now. Going slow-mo.
Just for the fun of saying why, I kind of saw it as like the question maybe 2 questions ago where arm throw, Blue kind of came full circle. like to me, when Zach said all Red did was kind of post up and lift his head, but I'm not calling it all he did. I'm like, he did. Like to me, I don't know if my vocabulary is wrong, but like counter it, you know. And to me, it wasn't a slip. It was great awareness by Red. So you know, I was looking at it much like that 2 questions ago, where Blue floated around and it was aware of the whole situation. It wasn't just a slip. Like I don't see Blue as slipping. I see Red as doing a nice job of knowing
Bending.
that.
Yeah. I think that goes back to what we were talked about last week, was the defense he had. Just his good defense allowed him not to give up 4 points there. So that was his points. Basically, he scored off that. He didn't score points because he had great defense. His great defense just allowed him not to get scored on. Because if he doesn't have good defense, he's probably going to his back in this process.
And if we reward Red in these types of situations, then Blue's going to stop taking risks, which means our sport becomes really boring, right?
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's the justification a lot of times for this. Now, here's a question for you. So let's say you're the coach of Blue. They give 2, and then they score the 2s. You challenge, and it gets changed. What happens to the other 2s?
Gone.
And what time is on the clock?
So whenever he ended up going behind, and all the 2s are gone. Like this is for me in the corner. This is an immediate block throw. The moment right there, if I see that referee hold up 2, like if his hand goes up, which I'm assuming it does, I'm throwing block. The block's already out, but I know he's got to let it continue, right? He's got to let the action go, but the block's out of my hand already.
Yeah, that's a good part of getting it out quick, so that way it gets challenged. If the referee scores it, getting it out quick, checking the chairman. But yeah, the 2s are all gone. So this went from 6 points on the board to 0 points on the board. And I'm not sure when this action finally finishes, because it goes for a little bit. Because this clip was actually 25 seconds long. And once he finally stops it, and you do this review, the time, this is one of the few times that time is actually going to go back on the clock. So as a coach, it's important to know that part of what situations get challenged and when does time go back on the board. So I would say probably right around 5 minutes and 21 seconds or 5:20 is what will be back on the board after this gets reviewed.
I've actually been on both sides of that. Sorry, quick snippet here, where I didn't throw it because we were still winning, because I knew because they gave the takedown, but we had the 4, but the clock time would go back. I didn't want to give him any more time on his feet to get my wrestler because we were already tired, so I didn't throw it. And everybody was yelling at me, throw the damn block. I'm like, no, I'm not going to throw the block because they'll reset the score and he'll have another chance. And then he ends up on, so we defend and we win because we defend, but we go back, that's another 10, 12 seconds he gets on his feet to get back after us. So there's a lot of caveats where if you're coaching, you got to make a really snap decision, right? It's got to be happening fast. But I've been on the other side of it where I didn't throw the block because I knew the clock time would go back, and I didn't want to give this guy another chance on us on our feet.
Another thing that happens in this video that looks evident to me is Blue quit wrestling. He took his head out of the game because he thought that should have been a slip. And this arm collapses here. Head's down. Shaking his head.
Yeah, that's good. All right, very good. Next.
Damn.
All right.
2 more. 4 choices here.
Picked.
Done.
You ugly.
Wow, that was really ugly.
Yeah. I should have picked. Watching it's screwing me up.
I made a choice. I don't think it's a good choice, but I made a choice.
I'd be confident in that choice,
Watch
Zach.
this last one.
Ah,
Oh,
Oh,
Ugh.
no.
That was the correct one.
Wrong.
One red. See,
No.
I knew it. I did have the one part right. I got the one part right, just the wrong color. I swear I saw red step out of bounds. That's the only reason why I did it.
I thought about it. I couldn't see that.
Like right there, he's out.
no, it wasn't a full foot.
I didn't see
Yeah.
it.
You
I looked at
can't
it.
tell. His toe's down. It doesn't have to be a full foot. His
Still
foot is
on the
out.
line. You can't see
No,
space
it's out.
between his foot and the
Oh,
yellow.
watch the last one, right? One more. He's out.
Mm.
100%
That's
he's
on the
out.
line. That's
Well,
on
I
the
thought
line.
he
He's
was
out.
full on running him out of bounds, and I didn't know if that was going to get rewarded.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Looking at, and that's right there is probably that's a question. That's a good question. I'll be honest with you, this video is really difficult to tell that in this situation.
I will
and
tell
his
you,
position
I'm
looks
throwing
all
it.
right.
Yeah, I'm throwing it no matter what because there's only minimal time left. 1 point won't make or break me. A takedown still wins the match. That if I'm Blues coach, that's where my brain would go on that one.
True.
So what was the ranking? It was one blue.
Yeah. So Zach, in this process, it would have been, was it red out or blue out here that you were talking about?
I red out. Like I was saying, one red.
That's what I had is red
That
out.
would be one blue though,
Yeah,
wouldn't
red.
it?
Sorry. I meant to say one blue. I had red out. I picked one blue. Pardon me.
All right, and then
Throw out the step out. How would you score this part? Just throw out.
So it's a slip on the edge, but you can't give a slip on the edge, right? So like the best score you can give him is 1.
yeah, that's basically where I agree. I think it was a risk. He, it wasn't great, but he didn't hold him on his back. So now the question comes out to who went out first in that process. And so yeah, it's that process, and that's where is it one red, is it one blue? And
Who
I think, and I looked at this a few times to try this. Is this did blue go out? Did red go out? Is red considered out in this process? I think that's the part we look at because often when we say is one hand out of bounds.
No.
Often we say no. The only time I would say one hand is out of bounds, like if your hand's here and your chest is in front of your hand and it's completely out of bounds and your chest is that far. But to me, this looks like his hand is out and his chest is on top of him right now. But Blue's head looks out to me.
Yeah.
But are you calling that a slip or not?
Yes. So in this process, it scored it as one red. So it was either, in the process, either going to score it 2 red because he didn't expose and it wasn't, so just 2 red came up on top. Or it's got to be an out of bounds. And to me, this was out of bounds. So it either has to be 1 red or 1 blue in this process.
Or that scramble out of bounds?
What's that?
Which one are you calling out of bounds? The feet?
Not this.
This right here.
That.
Yep.
And that's what I was looking at in this process. And we have one hand here, and to me, blue is out of bounds.
That's what I'm not getting yet. If that's a slip, like on the other one, slip, no points.
Correct.
You can't slip out of bounds, Danny.
Yes, right. I get that. So why would it not be just no score?
Because they were standing and they went out of bounds. So out of bounds essentially trumps the risk part. So it is risk. It's like a mixture of 2. Like it's risk so he doesn't give up 2. Because red comes, if you look, red comes up on top in this position. So if you say it's no risk, then you would score 2 red here. But if you call it risk, then it's out of bounds. So whoever was out of bounds first, that's where the 1 point comes in. And so in this case, I thought blue was out of bounds first, completely out of bounds, more so than red. So 1 point for red for this, basically a slip out of bounds is what this was.
Gotcha. I just needed it.
Only one person got this question right. Who was it?
Me.
Nice.
Nice.
I really just ask these questions for the viewers. I get it the first time.
I was just asking for a friend, right? Just asking for a friend.
Very good. All right, last question here. There's 2 situations you have to score.
Oh, 2, you say?
So it's two risk or no risk situations.
What? Are we scoring both things?
You have to score both.
Yep.
So the first thing I listed is the score for the first action.
Okay.
And the second one I scored is the second point listed is the second action. So essentially you have a choice of it's either risk or it's 2 blue, or it's the second one is either risk or it's 2 red, just in different combinations.
No!
Oh,
Damn it. 2 red. I was thinking that was the only, yeah. I want like a 50-50 next time, just so I could take less points off.
I agreed with all your choices, half of each choice. It was the combo that was the tough part.
So I guess the first one, let's look at the first action in this.
That's definitely slip.
That was a
Risk, no
really
risk.
bad attempt.
Clear
I mean, I get that it's risk. It's obviously slip, right? That, yeah.
That's what I said. Like this, to me, this is worse technique than the first one we watched.
Yeah.
Agreed.
You know,
That's why
so,
I gave a 2 blue on that. It almost was to me like red just turned around and knelt down. And
Right.
I didn't want him to have anything for it. And no points to me on that is like a reward. So I just wanted blue to have 2.
yeah, what I noted here, the referee actually like gives them a little like, you know, hey, like that, you can't do that again. But I thought that first one was a risk, no matter how bad it was. Blue really didn't do anything. The question then was this one.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I'll be honest with you. I was the correct one that answered. I was 50-50 on it, but I figured since red got away with one, I was like, man, they're gonna have to just help this guy out a little bit, right? Because at least he threw something.
Absolutely, that's not a bad explanation for that.
That's why I went
close, and you're like, you know what? I'm just gonna not do it.
But I can see why it's 2, right? I can.
Yeah.
He's got a good wrap around the waist. He's under the arm on that side. All those, everything he did looks good, right? I mean, but I wish he would. If he would have held him for a half a second longer, I know it sounds really crazy to say it that way. I honestly would have switched to the other one, but he just didn't hold it very well, very long.
Sure.
Yeah, I was looking at red initiating the pressure and blue reacting to what red was initiating. You know, it wasn't like blue was the one pulling the trigger and making this action.
This is a prime example of where video and stopping the action can talk you into a score.
Yeah, it's true.
I went 0-0 both times.
I did too. That's what I went with.
That makes me feel better.
You know, I think when I watched this, and I go back to like, did his knee hit before? I felt like he pulled. Yeah, I thought he gave him a little pull up, and then they went forward, and I thought it happened before he hit his knee. Like when I watched this, he goes.
The only reason to score red on this, as far as I'm concerned, is he did dig, he did have an angle, and he was moving forward. And if you want to cause a hesitation there, you can cause a hesitation by stopping the video right there.
I'll play from here.
Yeah, there's a slight hesitation. Zach, you and I had, Zach Dominguez, you and I had one similar to this in Northern Plains last year.
Yep, we did.
I
did. I don't remember how come I won it, but I just figured my block was cooler.
It was experienced head official. That's what it was.
This is where being a coach hurts you a little bit, because when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at the technique portion of it. and it's tainting what I think should score it. Can you run that back again? Zach? I mean, I look at, he's hitting a headlock, but if you look at the arm, his left arm that he's holding, it's below the elbow, so it's not going to go. Watch when he steps in.
Mm-hmm.
Watch. So he lets go, but look at his grip. He's on the elbow to start, but he's way down. He's leaving off the arm. So as a coach, okay, that's not there. So I factor the technique portion into it there. That's why I actually got it right. But I think that the technique, I think you overlook it as a coach. And plus your athlete. My kid can't score from there. That kid didn't score from there. I saw the lock. It wasn't a good hole. Where so you can look at it with no objection and just look at it.
To your point, JD, if Blue's right leg would have been in between, right, he would have had more. He would have had definitely more hips involved in that throw. And
right.
He's already got there's too much space for that throw to actually be pulled off correctly. 100% agree, JD. But foot in the middle, and then he winds up a little bit better. Maybe he moves him a little bit more. Does he make the throw?
Yeah, but
probably not.
That hand's on the elbow, and it's not deep, and he's going to slip. It's got no leverage as it comes around. That left arm is going to just go all the way down, off his wrist and off his hand, and now he's just got a head. So go slow.
Yeah, for sure.
Watch that left arm go.
I'll play here.
Look at the position of the official on that. He couldn't see that. No way, no how.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Oh, watch that arm. That arm just slides right down and off, and he's not headed to the ground with no arm. Left arm. So but I think that sometimes hurts in trying to just be neutral and definitive about the action and score, where you know the locks and the holds, and hey, that's bullshit. It's not going to score there anyways. So I'm going to give him 2.
Yeah. This is a really hard one to challenge. Like is red, like they called this risk and they called this slip and brought him up. And honestly, if you look at it, imagine viewing it from where the coaches, judge, referee, and the other coach are.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can't see some of the things that we're looking at here. And if you're red, are you really going to challenge this with 1:40 to go in the match and you're up 3?
Nope.
No.
That's the part I hate. That's the part that got me right there. The beginning.
All right. Let's see.
Tommy.
I'm stuck in bronze. This just hurt.
That's 2 weeks in a row. We're never gonna hear the end.
There you go, Danny. Get a picture. You got 5th place, bud.
Too fast. I'd throw that 4th place medal away.
I didn't know they gave medals for 4th place.
It's 2/3. It's 2/3. Yeah.
And I think this is the one, again, if you're looking at a situation that's close, and if it's a good challenging situation, I think it's risk and no risk is always a good challenge as a coach. It's just a matter of, is it a good time to make that challenge? And Zach, I think you had a great point of like, you know what, I thought it was a risk, but I didn't want to add the time. Like it was better just to take the 2 points and move on, in certain situations. And that's a part of that, I think, as a coach, you have to really weigh out, like, is this worth challenging this situation or not? But certainly if there's one that has a chance, I think, to potentially get changed, this is definitely one of them, because it's very much a, how they're viewing it and what they're looking for in that process. Is it a risk? Is it not? And it may look different based on what they're viewing on camera too.
What's next week's?
Attack, counterattack. So you're going to get some double leg, body locks, and then I'll probably try to intermix some other kind of similar situations. Maybe not exactly the same thing like that, but an attack, counterattack kind of concept. So that's going to be the main part, which is
crushed.
I've been in Fargo where I said, hey, can you guys score this? And I had 3 or 4 different opinions of all the coaches in the room, and they were like, I said, now you know why Matt 2 and Matt 23 may not call it the same way.
These are tough. These are great practice for our officials, great practice for our coaches, and to get them in the hands of our athletes as well. I think that's really important. I know Jess and I were talking at the beginning of the call. Let's get these links out to our national team athletes, and that's at all different age levels. And we certainly appreciate not only when the panel shares these with your folks and those that you influence, but for those that have watched the video, to get a chance to share this with your Facebook groups, like copy these links and share them. These are exactly what our country needs to better understand our sport, how it's officiated, and how we can coach it in the room.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much to our panel, the U.S. Wrestling Officials Association, National Coaches Council, and our special guests. Mike Clayton, you're a Coach Education Manager for USA Wrestling. We'd like to say thanks for joining us for Moments Off the Mat. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Be safe.